She was 9 months pregnant, out of options, and out of breath as she stood before the ivy-covered stone steps of an abandoned countryside church. The sky above her was pale and quiet, but inside her heart, a storm raged. With nowhere else to go, she placed a trembling hand on the old wooden door, not expecting kindness, just shelter. But what she found inside wasn't just safety. It was a story buried in time, waiting to be finished, and she was the final chapter. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing your stories. And if tales of resilience and unexpected grace move you, hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's story is even more powerful than this one, and you won't want to miss it. The wind carried a bitter edge as she stepped off the gravel road and into the shadow of the stone church. Her breath came in short, careful puffs, one hand beneath her belly, the other resting on the head of her golden retriever, Jasper, whose quiet presence had been her only anchor these past few days. Her name was Lila. 28, 8 months pregnant, and walking into the unknown with nothing but a backpack, a leash, and a trembling hope that the door would open. She hadn't planned on this. Nobody does. But when the landlord changed the locks and her phone battery died 2 towns back, the only place that didn't feel like rejection was this, an old church she remembered passing as a child. Overgrown, forgotten, yet somehow still standing. There was no cross left on the steeple. Just a tower, crooked and silent, like it was waiting for something. Lila stepped slowly up the stone steps. The door was tall and arched, its surface gray with age, vines curling up the sides like veins. She paused, then reached for the handle. It turned. Inside, the air smelled of dust and cedar, like time had folded in on itself. Light from the stained glass filtered down in soft colors that pooled on the cracked stone floor. The pews were still there, most of them, though some had collapsed under years of weather and silence. Jasper sniffed the air, ears perked. Lila closed the door gently behind her. It made a soft echo that filled the entire nave. She stood still for a long moment, letting the silence press around her. Then her knees buckled just slightly, and she sat on the front pew, lowering herself carefully. Her hands cradled her belly out of instinct. "Just for a night," she whispered. "Just one night, to figure out what's next." Jasper lay at her feet, his tail brushing the dusty stone. The last 2 weeks had been a blur of bus rides, shelters too full to help, and closed doors. She had called in favors, most of them unanswered. She had cried when no one could hear. But now, in this broken chapel, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: stillness. Above the altar, the faded remains of a mural clung to the wall. An angel or a saint, maybe both. Half of the face was worn away. But the eyes that remained seemed kind. Lila followed their gaze to the far side of the sanctuary, where a side door hung slightly ajar, leading deeper into the building. There might be more. But for now, she stayed where she was. The baby shifted inside her, a soft flutter. She placed a hand there and closed her eyes. Maybe the world hadn't forgotten her completely. Maybe this place, old, quiet, and half forgotten, was waiting for her too. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, but inside, Lila finally exhaled. The morning came slowly through the stained glass. Golds, blues, and pale reds spilled across the sanctuary floor like watercolors bleeding across paper. Lila stirred awake on the pew, stiff from the wooden bench and the weight of everything she carried, some of it in her backpack, most of it in her heart. Jasper had curled up beside her during the night, head resting on her ankle. Now, he lifted his head at the sound of a bird calling from a broken window near the rafters. The church was still, not dead, just sleeping. Lila sat up carefully, a dull ache in her back reminding her that comfort was a luxury she hadn't known in weeks. Her blanket, just an old flannel shirt she'd wrapped around herself, slid to the floor. The chill in the air made her pull her coat tighter around her belly. She looked around again. In the soft morning light, the decay looked almost beautiful. Dust floated in beams of color, pews cast long shadows, and ivy peeked through a crack in the rear wall. It was like stepping into a dream someone else had once believed in. She moved slowly toward the side door she'd noticed the night before. It creaked when she opened it. Behind it was a narrow hallway, the air mustier than the main room, with peeling wallpaper and water-damaged floors. The walls were lined with old picture frames, most too faded to make out. One, though, showed a small group of women in front of the church, smiling in black and white, their hands dusted with flour. A community, once. The hallway led to a smaller room, a sort of office or study. The desk had collapsed inward, but a shelf on the wall still held a scattering of books. Most were swollen with moisture, their spines bowed, but one caught her eye. It was a thin, leather journal, wedged between hymnals. She pulled it free. The cover was blank, but inside were pages filled with neat, looping handwriting. Notes, thoughts, prayers, and letters, dozens of them addressed to no one in particular. As if someone had written them hoping they'd be read, someday, by someone who needed to. She skimmed a line at random. If you're reading this, you're not the first to seek shelter here. Don't be afraid. This place remembers kindness. Lila blinked, then turned the page. My name was Clara. I came here when I had nowhere else, and what I found was more than shelter. It was purpose. She clutched the book to her chest. There was a story here, one that wasn't over. Behind her, Jasper whined gently. She turned, gave him a small smile, then looked back at the journal. Maybe she wasn't alone in this after all. The journal sat open across Lila's lap as she settled onto the same pew where she'd first rested. The morning light warmed the pages, though the air still held a chill. Jasper lay at her feet, his head nestled against her shoes, as if he sensed that something sacred was being uncovered. Lila turned another page carefully, afraid the delicate paper might tear. Clara's handwriting flowed like woven thread, gentle, steady. Some entries were simple prayers. Others were confessions of loneliness, but all carried a quiet strength beneath the ink. One entry stopped her. The church doesn't choose who it shelters. It only opens its doors. I arrived with nothing but fear, and a child I hadn't yet met. I thought I was broken. But some places don't see broken things, they see beginnings. Lila's breath caught. A mother, just like her. She looked up, scanning the empty church. Suddenly, it felt different, no longer abandoned, but waiting. The silence didn't press on her. It held her. She closed the journal gently and stood. Her joints protested from the cold and from carrying new life inside her, but she steadied herself and walked toward the far pews where the wood looked darker and less worn. Something about them pulled at her. Dust danced above the third pew from the back, where the sunlight narrowed into one golden stripe. Lila brushed her hand along the surface. The wood was smoother here, as though someone had once sat in this very spot over and over, wearing it down with their presence. She lowered herself onto it. Jasper followed, curling beneath her legs. Tucked between the pew's backrest and the wall was something small her fingers brushed against paper. She paused, then carefully pulled it free. An envelope. The paper was yellowed, corners frayed, sealed with a faded red wax that had long since cracked. On the red wax, front, in faint handwriting, "For the next one who needs it." Lila swallowed. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a folded letter. "If you're reading this, then you've found the same refuge I once did. You might be frightened. You might think you are alone. But you're not. This church remembers every soul who has walked through its doors with trembling hands and hopeful hearts. If you feel lost, stay. Listen. Someone before you left light here." There was no name at the bottom, just a small pressed flower, flattened and fragile, placed between the last lines. Lila sat still, the letter trembling slightly between her fingers. Outside, a sparrow landed on the windowsill, chirping softly into the quiet space. Lila pressed the flower between her palms, as if afraid it might disappear. Someone had been here before her. Someone scared. Someone waiting. And yet they had survived. She folded the letter back into the envelope and held it against her chest. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like she was trespassing. She felt like she'd been expected. Her heart was still thudding when she made her way back to the small side room. She carried the journal and the letter carefully, as though they might dissolve if she walked too fast. Jasper followed close, brushing against her legs. Lila sat on a broken chair by the window where threads of light pushed through dusty glass. She opened the journal again, flipping forward to pages she hadn't yet reached. The handwriting changed slightly, still delicate, but more urgent, as though written during sleepless nights. "My name is Clara Matthews. I came here during the winter of 1000, 972. I was 17, unmarried, and ashamed. This church was abandoned to the world, but not to God. Not to me. Lila traced the name with her fingertip. Clara. For the first time, the woman in the letters felt real, not a ghost, but a heartbeat buried in paper. She continued reading. There was a man who kept the key. Then, his name was Father August. He didn't send me away. He didn't ask whose fault it was, or where my family had gone. He just brought blankets and bread. He said the walls remember kindness, even when people forget. Lila felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. She turned the page. My daughter was born in the bell tower room. The wind was cold that night. The candles kept blowing out. But when I held her, I knew this place was not a ruin. It was a cradle. Jasper gave a soft whine, as if sensing the heaviness in the air. Lila looked up toward the ceiling, to where the bell tower stretched above, silent and tall. Someone had given birth up there. Someone had whispered hope into the walls. Her hands didn't feel as cold anymore. She turned another page, but this one was different. The ink was darker, newer. If someone finds this, tell her, she is not the first. Tell her being alone does not mean being forgotten. Tell her the world can break you. But sometimes it also gives you a place to heal. The last line was smudged, as though touched by rain or tears. Lila closed the journal softly and rested her hand over her stomach. The baby shifted again, gentle, like a reminder. A deep breath shook through her. Then she whispered it aloud for the first time. Clara. The name hung in the still air, like it still belonged to the church somehow. Outside, the clouds shifted, and the light spilling through the stained glass turned warmer, softer. And though no one else said it back, Lila could have sworn the walls whispered her name, too. The scent reached her first faint, but unmistakable. Fresh bread. Lila had just returned from the edge of the chapel, where she'd cleared a spot beneath the stained glass window to rest that evening. She froze mid-step. Jasper lifted his head and gave a quiet, uncertain chuff, tail low. Someone had been here. She glanced around. The main door remained closed. No creak, no echo of footsteps. Yet at the foot of the boat of Amena Ben here, altar sat a paper bag, still warm. A folded blanket rested beside it, worn, but clean. Her first instinct was to be afraid. But something about the way it was left carefully placed, not thrown or abandoned, softened that fear into curiosity. She approached slowly, Jasper staying close, his nose twitching. The paper bag held half a loaf of still warm bread, a small container of butter, a wedge of cheese, and a red apple wrapped in a cloth napkin. Nothing extravagant. But to Lila, it was a feast. The blanket smelled faintly of lavender and thyme. She picked it up, unfolding it gently. Tucked inside was a small piece of paper, folded twice. No name, no explanation. Just a line. You are not invisible. Rest easy. Lila's breath caught. She looked around the empty church again, searching the corners, the balcony above, but there was no movement. No sound but her own breath, and Jasper's steady panting. She sank slowly onto the pew and placed the food beside her. She didn't eat right away. Instead, she sat with her hands resting on her belly, eyes flicking toward the side door and the journal waiting in the other room. Someone had seen her. Someone had chosen not to question, not to intrude but to care. She took a bite of the bread. Still warm, still soft. She closed her eyes and let the taste settle over her. She couldn't remember the last time food had tasted like something more than survival. Thank you, she whispered, not to anyone she could see, but to the quietness that had now offered her 2 miracles in 2 days. That night, she wrapped herself in the lavender blanket, the journal beside her pillow, and felt something she hadn't in weeks, safe. And just before she drifted into sleep, she thought she heard footsteps fade softly into the night outside. Not rushed, not fearful, just someone walking home after leaving hope behind. Morning brought birdsong and soft light once again. Lila sat at the altar steps with Jasper beside her, finishing the pobbling, last of the apple from the paper bag. Her fingers brushed over the folded note, once more. You are not invisible, words that had stayed with her all night. She decided to explore more of the church. The narrow side hallway extended beyond the office and bent into what once might have been a corridor for staff or choir members. Paint peeled from the walls like old paper, and every step echoed. Most doors were locked or warped shut, but at the end of the hallway, hidden behind a dusty tapestry, she found one that gave way with a sharp push. Inside was a small room, cloaked in shadows. Light spilled in through a high, arched window coated with grime. The air was thick with dust and quiet. The room was simple. An old bed frame against one wall, shelves stacked with books and hymnals, a basin, and a large trunk at the foot of the bed. The room didn't feel forgotten. It felt tucked away. Lila stepped in slowly, brushing her hand along the edge of the trunk. Jasper padded in behind her, tail wagging tentatively. She knelt and opened it. Inside were folded linens, a small cross, a set of worn rosary beads, and a stack of yellowed notebooks. But what caught her attention most was a photograph. A black and white image of a young woman holding a swaddled baby, seated on the very same bed Lila now faced. Behind her stood a man in priest's robes, smiling faintly. On the back, Clara, 1973, with baby Miriam, taken by Father August. Lila sat back hard on the wooden floor, the photo trembling in her hands. This room had been lived in, loved in. A mother had raised her child here, not in shame, but in quiet strength. She opened one of the notebooks. Inside were schedules, scriptures, and notes. But tucked into the front page was another letter. If you're the one who found the pew, the journal, or the letters, then you're part of this story now. This room was mine once, and now it's yours for as long as you need. May the roof hold, may the silence heal, and may you always know that you matter more than the world made you believe. Clara Lila wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She wasn't just living in someone else's memory, she was being invited into it. She stood, looked around the room, and whispered softly, "Thank you." Then she began to make the bed. Not just to rest, but to stay. The narrow staircase groaned beneath her weight as Lila climbed, one hand gripping the worn stone wall, the other resting just above her belly. Jasper waited below, uneasy with heights, watching her ascend with soft whines echoing through the church's stillness. She hadn't planned to explore the tower so soon, but something about the photograph, the one of Clara and the baby taken in this very place, had stirred something inside her. The woman in the picture had looked proud, unashamed, almost defiant in the way she held her child. Lila needed to see the place where that kind of courage had bloomed. Dust spiraled in the air with every step, the scent of old wood and forgotten years rising around her. When she reached the landing, the small arched room opened up in front of her. It was simple: exposed rafters, a single cracked window, and a heavy rope that hung from the ceiling where the bell once rang. The bell itself was still there, massive and rusted, a dull gray now instead of gleaming brass. But it was the floor beneath it that caught her attention. Someone had placed wooden planks across the stone in a rough square. Not quite a rug, not quite a platform. Lila stepped closer and noticed a handle, nearly hidden in the grain, a trapdoor. Her breath caught. With effort, she knelt and pulled it open. The hinges resisted but gave way with a soft creak. Inside was a small wooden box, wrapped in linen. She drew it out carefully and sat back on her heels. The box wasn't locked, just tied shut with twine, brittle with age. She undid it slowly, reverently, and lifted the lid. Inside lay a wax-sealed envelope, a folded piece of parchment, and a tiny knitted cap faded rose in color, soft as air. She picked up the parchment first. It was a short note, written in Clara's looping hand. For the next mother to walk these floors. You are not a burden. You are not a mistake. You are not alone. Ring the bell when it's time. Someone will hear. Lila felt the tears before she realized she was crying. She touched the cap gently, then the seal on the envelope. It was unbroken. Her name wasn't on it, but somehow it felt like it belonged to her. She didn't open it yet. Instead, she looked out the narrow window. From this height, the churchyard spread out below, green, quiet, safe. Her hand found the bell rope. She gave it the lightest tug. The bell groaned, but didn't ring. Not yet. She smiled softly, placing a hand on her belly. "Not yet," she whispered. Then she closed the box, tied it again, and placed it back into the space beneath the floor. She didn't need it just yet, but it was there, waiting. That night, the wind picked up again. It howled through the stone arches and around the bell tower, shaking ivy loose and sending dry leaves skittering across the floor of the nave. Lila lay awake in the small tucked-away room, one hand resting on her stomach, the other gripping Clara's journal beneath her pillow. Jasper stirred at her feet, ears twitching. Then came the sound. Not wind, not footsteps, but humming. Lila sat up, heart racing. She knew the church was empty. She had locked the main door. The only light came from the moon through the stained window, soft, silver, ghost-like. The humming was soft, a melody, familiar and distant all at once, like a lullaby sung through water. She stood slowly, her joints aching from sleep, and stepped into the hallway. "Hello," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The air was still. The sound had stopped. But something tugged at her, a feeling. She followed it past the altar, across the nave, to the far end, near the confessional booths, long unused and half-rotted with age. She paused. The humming returned, faint now, behind the wall. Jasper sat beside her, unmoving. She placed a hand against the wood, and felt warmth. Not heat, not danger. Warmth, like a palm, pressed gently to hers through the stone. Then silence. She stepped back, unsure if it had even happened. Then she noticed it. A word, carved into the wall in tiny letters near the baseboard, half covered by dust. Miriam. The baby from the photograph. Lila knelt, brushed it clean with her sleeve. Her chest ached not from fear, but from something deeper. A connection. A tether between lives that never crossed in time, but still found each other through place. She whispered the name aloud. Miriam. The silence that followed felt reverent, like an answer. She rose slowly and returned to her room, heart pounding in a rhythm that wasn't fear anymore. It was recognition. She lay down again and felt her baby move, strong and slow. Jasper circled twice and curled at her feet. The wind outside calmed, and in the stillness, she closed her eyes. Not alone. Not this time. The days passed not in rushes, but in quiet rhythm. Mornings with soft bread left near the altar. Blankets added when the nights turned colder. No name, no knock. Just the steady hum of someone watching, helping from a distance. Lila began leaving thank you notes tucked into the stone ledge by the door. She never signed them. She didn't have to. Jasper stayed close, his presence a constant thread of warmth and alertness. He would sit by the door sometimes, ears perked, as if he too was listening for something more. Lila began to clean, slowly. Not from obligation, but from instinct, sweeping dust from the sanctuary floors, wiping the windows, replacing what books she could salvage onto the shelf in the side room. She even found a small broom closet with candles, matches, and a rusted old kettle she scrubbed until it shone. Somehow, caring for the church made her feel more cared for in return. Clara's journal stayed by her side. Each night, she read another page. Some were soft reflections, others raw, desperate. But every word wrapped around Lila like a thread tying her to something she hadn't realized she needed, a legacy of survival. But it was the sealed envelope in the bell tower that stayed in her thoughts. She waited until one morning when the clouds thinned and light filtered into the hidden room upstairs just so. The box still sat beneath the trapdoor, the knitted cap beside it. She opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter, short and careful. To the next mother who finds her way here. I don't know your name. I don't need to. If you are here, if you felt the ache of not knowing where to go, then you are exactly the woman I once was. I raised my daughter in this church for 6 months before the world opened a new door. Her name is Miriam. I gave her that name because it meant wished for child. And because even when I felt unworthy, she reminded me that love doesn't wait for perfect conditions to bloom. It just needs space and safety. So I leave this for you, a name, if you need one. One that carries hope and remembrance, passed not from blood, but from grace. Take it if it feels right. Or leave it, and know you are part of something greater either way. With quiet faith, Lila read the letter twice, then held it against her chest. She didn't cry this time. She just closed her eyes and whispered the name. Miriam. Her baby shifted gently inside her. Like an answer. She stayed in the bell tower for hours that day, not doing anything, just being. Just existing in a space where someone once healed and left room for someone else to do the same. When she descended, Jasper waiting at the bottom, she smiled through a quiet breath and whispered to him. Her name is Miriam. And for the first time since she arrived, the church no longer felt like shelter. It felt like home. It began with a tightness, deep, low, familiar, and foreign all at once. Lila was sweeping beneath the stained glass window when the first contraction struck, folding her breath in half. She leaned against the wall, steadying herself, jaw clenched. Jasper whined and rushed to her side, sensing the shift. Another wave came 10 minutes later. Then 6. There was no panic, no fear, only focus. She gathered what she needed: the kettle, the towels, the last of the fresh water she'd stored. She lit 3 candles in the small side room and spread the blanket from her mystery visitor across the mattress. The journal sat on the table nearby. The box from the bell tower, open, the tiny knitted cap resting on top. She labored alone for hours, gripping the edge of the bed, her cries muffled by the stone. Jasper never left her side, head pressed to her knee, eyes wide. It was agony. It was instinct. It was holy. When the final wave crested, and her child's first cry echoed through the rafters, Lila fell back into the blankets, chest heaving, eyes blurred with tears. A girl, 10 perfect fingers. A cry that split the air like the very bell she had never rung. Miriam, Lila whispered, voice cracking with exhaustion, awe, and something deeper: fulfillment. She held the baby close, swaddled her in the lavender blanket, pressed her forehead to the newborn's, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in her life. Outside, the first light of dawn filtered through the trees, casting soft gold onto the church doors. Lila stayed in that room for the rest of the morning, barely moving, whispering to Miriam, humming songs her mother used to sing. When Jasper curled beside them, she rested her hand on his back and whispered, "We're okay now." Later that afternoon, a soft knock came, not loud, just enough to be heard. She wrapped Miriam carefully, tucked her into the crook of one arm, and opened the braai's main door with the other. It was an older woman, tall, wrapped in a green shawl, carrying a basket. Her eyes welled the moment she saw the baby. "I heard the bell," she said quietly, even though it never rang. Lila didn't answer. She just smiled, stepped aside, and let her in. The woman didn't ask questions. She only placed the basket on the pew, opened it to reveal soup, fruit, more bread. "You're not the first," she said softly, brushing her fingers across the back of the pew. "But you'll be remembered." She stayed for only a few minutes, kissed Miriam's forehead, and left through the same quiet door she'd once used to leave kindness behind. Over the next few weeks, the town learned, in whispers, that the old church was no longer empty. Lila remained. She built a cradle from repurposed pew wood, cleaned the bell tower room until it glowed, named the sanctuary's front corner, Clara's Light, and placed the knitted cap beneath the window where the sun always hit. People came, gently, quietly, to leave diapers, food, books, firewood. They never stayed long. They didn't need to. The church had a heartbeat again. Years later, when Miriam asked about her name, Lila showed her the letter, the journal, the photo of a young mother in the bell tower, holding a child just like her. And Miriam said softly, "I want to be like her." "You already are," Lila said. And outside, through the old stained glass, the morning light turned warm again,